In 1944, just months before Edgar Cayce's death, a pregnant woman came to him with a question that seemed simple enough. She wanted to know about her unborn child's soul history. What karmic patterns would this child carry? What lessons had they come to learn? But Cayce's answer went somewhere unexpected, somewhere that troubled even his closest associates who were present that day. He told her that her child was part of what he called the vanguard, the first wave of a massive influx of souls who had been waiting on the other side, preparing in non-physical realms for the exact conditions Earth would reach in the early 21st century. These weren't ordinary souls beginning new incarnation cycles. These were highly evolved beings who had lived in advanced civilizations during previous eras of human history: Atlantis, ancient Egypt, pre-Vedic India, cultures that achieved remarkable spiritual and technological heights before their eventual collapse. And they had been training, waiting, watching from beyond the veil for the precise moment when humanity would be ready for their return. Cayce said that moment would come approximately 75 to 80 years from the time of that reading in 1944, which means if his vision was accurate, it's happening right now. The souls he saw preparing to return are already here, walking among us, many of them still children, some of them perhaps watching this video. In the next 40 minutes, you're going to discover what Edgar Cayce saw about this next cycle of returning souls. Who are they really? What civilizations did they come from? And what did they accomplish in those previous incarnations? Why are they coming specifically now when Earth seems to be in crisis rather than readiness? And most importantly, how can you recognize if you're part of this incoming wave, or if you're one of the souls already here whose purpose is to prepare the ground for their arrival? This isn't speculation or channeled material from unverifiable sources. This is documented prophecy from America's most carefully studied psychic, a man who gave over 14,000 documented readings while in trance, accessing what he called the Akashic Records. A man whose medical diagnoses were verified by physicians, whose archaeological predictions led to actual discoveries, whose insights into past civilizations have been partially confirmed by modern research. What Edgar Cayce saw about the souls coming now will change how you understand not just the future of human consciousness, but your own purpose within it, your own place in this extraordinary moment of planetary transformation. Because whether you realize it or not, you're part of this story, and understanding which part you're meant to play changes everything. Before we explore who these returning souls are, you need to understand how Edgar Cayce came to know about them in the first place, because his awareness of this great return didn't appear suddenly. It emerged gradually, building across the final years of his life, as his readings began shifting focus in ways that surprised even him. In his earlier career during the 1920s and 1930s, most of Cayce's sessions addressed individual concerns, health diagnoses, personal guidance, past life readings for people curious about their soul history. Each reading was intimate, specific, focused on helping one person navigate their unique circumstances. But something changed in the 1940s. A pattern began emerging in the readings, something larger than individual karma, something that pointed toward collective movements of consciousness across time. He started speaking more frequently about soul groups, about clusters of beings who incarnate together, drawn to the same historical periods because they share complementary missions and intertwined karmic patterns. He described these groups the way a conductor might describe sections of an orchestra, each playing different parts, but all contributing to a unified symphony. Throughout his work, Cayce documented several previous waves of coordinated soul incarnations. He identified souls from Atlantis returning during the Industrial Revolution, drawn to that era because they needed to work through karma related to technology and its potential for both creation and destruction. He described souls from ancient Egypt incarnating during the Renaissance, returning to reawaken sacred geometry, mystical arts, and the integration of science with spirituality. He spoke of souls from the early Christian era, flooding back during the 1960s, coming to complete unfinished work around religious transformation and the death of dogmatic authority. Each wave, he explained, brought specific consciousness codes, frequencies of awareness that humanity needed for its next evolutionary step. Each influx of souls carried cellular memory of particular kinds of wisdom, and their very presence in physical form helped activate dormant potentials in the collective human field. But the wave Cayce began perceiving in his final readings was different in scope and significance from anything he'd documented before. He called it the Great Return, a convergence of souls from multiple advanced civilizations: Atlantis, Lemuria, Egypt, Tibet, ancient India, all incarnating within a compressed time frame, roughly between 1980 and 2040, all bringing combined wisdom to facilitate humanity's most significant transformation since the fall of Atlantis 12,000 years ago. If you listen to the voice recordings from Cayce's later sessions, you can hear something shift in his tone when he speaks about this incoming wave. There's an unusual emotion present, an awareness that he was documenting something monumental, a turning point in human evolution that wouldn't fully manifest until decades after his own death. This matters because it establishes something crucial about his authority on this subject. Cayce wasn't offering wishful thinking or spiritual fantasy. He was reporting what he saw in the Akashic Records, that vast field of information that exists beyond time, containing the past, present, and potential futures of every soul. And what he saw was both promise and warning, a tremendous opportunity for humanity's awakening, but also tremendous risk if the conditions for these souls' arrival weren't properly prepared. He knew he wouldn't live to see it unfold, but he documented it meticulously, trusting that when the time came, those who needed this information would find it. That time is now, and understanding where these souls have been, what they've been doing in the non-physical realms while they waited to return, is where we must turn next. Here's the mystery at the heart of Cayce's teaching about the Great Return. These incoming souls haven't been idle between incarnations. They haven't been simply waiting in some peaceful afterlife, resting between lifetimes. They've been in intensive training. Cayce described what he called preparation realms, specific non-physical dimensions where souls undergo focused development for particular Earth missions. And according to his readings, the souls of the Great Return have been in these realms for decades or even centuries of Earth time, preparing for the exact conditions they would encounter upon returning. Let me tell you what that preparation actually involves, because it's far more detailed than most people realize. The first phase is what Cayce called karmic review and planning. In this phase, souls work with guides and counsels, more advanced beings who serve as teachers and advisors, to examine their previous incarnations with complete clarity, not judgment, clarity. They see every choice they made, every pattern they repeated, every lesson they mastered or avoided, and from that comprehensive review, they identify the primary themes they want to work on in their next lifetime. This isn't forced curriculum. It's collaborative soul-level design. The soul chooses what it wants to learn, what karma it wants to resolve, what gifts it wants to develop. And the guides help refine those intentions into an incarnation blueprint, a general plan for the lifetime ahead. The second phase is frequency attunement. Cayce explained that each historical era has a different vibrational signature. Earth in the 21st century vibrates at a frequency that's more chaotic, faster, more technologically saturated than any previous period in human history. Souls who last incarnated in slower, simpler times would be completely overwhelmed if they dropped directly into modern Earth without preparation. So they undergo a gradual adjustment process, exposing themselves to Earth's current frequency in measured doses until they can tolerate it. Cayce said this attunement process is one reason why some souls wait so long between incarnations. They need time to recalibrate their entire energetic system to match where Earth has evolved to. The third phase is what Cayce called mission briefing. Here, souls receive detailed information about the specific work they've volunteered to do once they incarnate. Not orders, but reminders of commitments they made before leaving their previous lifetime. Promises they made to other souls, to guides, to the evolutionary process itself. Cayce said these briefings are remarkably specific. Souls know before birth the approximate decade they'll incarnate into, the general geographical region, often even the family line they'll enter. They know the broad strokes of their mission, the type of work they'll do, the kinds of people they'll serve, the consciousness shift they'll help facilitate. They don't know every detail. Free will remains, but they have a map, and part of their journey on Earth is remembering that map when the time is right. But the fourth phase is perhaps the most extraordinary, and it's unique to the Great Return. Cayce called it collective coordination. The souls in this incoming wave aren't just preparing individually, they're rehearsing together, forming teams and pods that will incarnate in proximity to each other, ensuring they'll find one another on Earth and activate their collaborative missions at the right time. Think of it like spiritual mission planning. Multiple divisions preparing to land simultaneously at coordinated points to accomplish a unified objective. These souls are practicing working together in the non-physical realms so that when they meet on Earth, often without conscious memory of their connection, they'll recognize each other at a soul level and naturally begin collaborating. Cayce said this level of coordination is unprecedented in Earth's history. Previous soul waves were smaller, more scattered, less synchronized. This wave is massive and precisely orchestrated because the work ahead requires it. But this raises the obvious question, what exactly is that work? Why does Earth need this level of coordinated intervention? And what's been happening on our planet that finally made conditions right for their return? Those are the questions we turn to next, because understanding the why of their arrival is essential to understanding your own role in what's unfolding, whether you're part of the incoming wave or whether you're here to prepare the ground for them. Edgar Cayce identified 3 distinct categories of souls within this incoming wave. Each group has different origins, different preparation paths, and different mission parameters. And understanding these 3 groups helps you recognize which one you might belong to or which one you're here to support. Let me reveal all 3 to you now. The first group, Cayce called the Atlantean Engineers. These are souls who lived during Atlantis at its technological peak before the final cataclysms that destroyed it. They worked with crystal technology, energy systems, and the manipulation of natural forces in ways that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. Cayce said these souls carry cellular memory, not just intellectual knowledge, but embodied understanding of how to work with Earth's electromagnetic grid, how to harmonize technology with consciousness, how to use power without being corrupted by it. And critically, they remember what went wrong. They remember the choices that led to Atlantis's destruction. They're incarnating now because humanity is approaching a similar technological threshold. Artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, quantum computing, technologies powerful enough to either elevate human civilization to unprecedented heights or destroy it completely. The Atlantean souls are here to ensure we don't repeat the catastrophic errors they witnessed and participated in 12,000 years ago. If you're from this group, you'll notice certain markers. You're simultaneously excited and terrified by modern technology, drawn to it, fascinated by its potential, but viscerally aware of its dangers in ways you can't fully explain. You might work in tech fields but feel constant ethical unease about what's being created. Or you might avoid technology entirely because something in you remembers what happens when it advances faster than wisdom. The second group are the mystery school initiates. These souls come from ancient Egypt, Greece, Tibet, India, centers of sacred knowledge where the mysteries of consciousness were preserved and transmitted through careful lineages. They were priests, priestesses, healers, and mystics who maintained humanity's connection to higher dimensions during ages when that knowledge was actively suppressed. Cayce explained that these souls are returning now because the veil between dimensions is thinning. The barrier that kept most humans locked in purely physical awareness is weakening. And as it weakens, humanity needs guides who remember how to navigate multi-dimensional reality safely, who can teach discernment between helpful and harmful non-physical entities, who can normalize expanded consciousness without causing mass confusion or psychosis. If you're from this group, spiritual practices feel like remembering rather than learning. The first time you meditate, you might have the odd sensation that you've done this thousands of times before. Energy work, ritual, divination, these don't feel new. They feel like coming home to something you always knew, but temporarily forgot. The third group, and perhaps the least understood, are the Lemurian harmonizers. These souls come from even older civilizations, Lemuria, Mu, pre-deluge cultures that existed before Atlantis. They worked with Earth's natural rhythms, plant consciousness, animal communication, and the harmonizing of human frequency with planetary frequency. Cayce said these souls are returning because Earth herself is in crisis. The planet's ecosystems, energy systems, and consciousness are under assault in ways that threaten not just human survival, but the viability of life itself. And the Lemurian souls know how to listen to what Earth needs. They can hear the planet's communications, feel her pain, and facilitate healing at the deepest ecological and energetic levels. If you're from this group, you feel grief about environmental destruction that goes beyond normal concern. It's a cellular ache, as if the harm being done to Earth is happening to your own body. You might have an almost mystical connection to nature. Plants respond to you, animals trust you. You can sense weather changes before they happen. Now here's what makes this incoming wave truly extraordinary. Unlike previous soul cycles where different groups incarnated sequentially, one wave completing its work before the next arrived, all three groups are coming simultaneously, right now, in overlapping generations. Cayce said this convergence is intentional. The challenges humanity faces require integrated wisdom. Technology, spirituality, and ecological balance must be woven together, and these three groups carry the pieces of that puzzle. But their arrival creates friction. These souls are incarnating into a world that wasn't designed for their level of sensitivity, their depth of perception, their breadth of purpose, which is why so many of them are currently struggling in ways that look like dysfunction, but are actually something else entirely. And that's what we need to understand next. This is the chapter that addresses a question many people ask when they first encounter this teaching. If these advanced souls are here to help, why does the world seem to be falling apart? Why is there so much chaos, division, breakdown, and suffering exactly when they're supposed to be arriving? Cayce's answer was both challenging and illuminating. The chaos isn't despite their arrival, it's because of it, and it's absolutely necessary. Let me explain what he meant. Cayce taught that advanced souls cannot simply incarnate into stable, comfortable conditions and expect to fulfill their missions. They require contrast. They require broken systems to rebuild, darkness to illuminate, crisis to respond to. Their gifts only activate when they're needed, when they're called forth by urgent necessity. If they arrive during peaceful, functional times, their extraordinary capacities would remain dormant, unnecessary, uncalled for. They would live ordinary lives, never accessing the deeper levels of power and wisdom they carry, because nothing in their environment would trigger those depths to emerge. So the pre-arrival conditions must include systemic breakdown, not as punishment but as catalyst, as activation field. Think of it this way: if you needed master architects to come help your civilization, you wouldn't call them when all the buildings are standing strong and beautiful. You'd call them when structures are collapsing, when the old designs are failing, when urgent reconstruction is required. The crisis itself is what activates their expertise. This is what's happening now. Cayce said the chaos of our current era, the political polarization, environmental crisis, economic instability, collective trauma, technological disruption, is the exact activation field these incoming souls need. Each crisis is a specific call to specific soul capacities. Climate catastrophe calls forth the Lemurian souls, who know how to hear Earth's needs and facilitate planetary healing. Technological crisis calls forth the Atlantean souls, who remember how consciousness and technology must integrate to avoid disaster. Spiritual crisis calls forth the mystery school souls, who can guide dimensional navigation as the veil thins. But here's the more difficult truth Cayce shared, and this is important if you think you might be part of the incoming wave. Many of these advanced souls have already incarnated. They were born between 1980 and 2010. They're currently in their teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, and a significant number of them are experiencing profound disorientation and distress because they came expecting certain conditions based on their interlife briefings. They expected Earth to be ready for them. They expected to activate smoothly into their missions. But instead, they've encountered a world far more damaged, chaotic, and resistant than they anticipated. This creates what Cayce called mission dissonance, the painful gap between what you came to do and what current conditions actually allow you to do. And this dissonance often manifests as depression, anxiety, chronic illness, addiction, or a pervasive sense of being lost despite having profound inner knowing. If this describes your experience, hear me carefully. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're struggling to function in a frequency field that's harder to navigate than you expected when you agreed to come. And this is where the other souls, those who incarnated in previous waves, those who've been here longer holding ground, become absolutely crucial. If you're one of them, your job isn't to fix everything before the new wave fully activates. Your job is to stabilize the frequency field enough that when they come online, they can actually function. You're not the main event. You're the ground crew, the support system, the stable foundation others will stand on while they do transformational work. Understanding that distinction changes everything about how you perceive your own purpose. You don't have to be extraordinary. You have to be steady. And sometimes being steady in the middle of chaos is the most extraordinary thing you can do. But how do you recognize these incoming souls? How do you know if you're one of them or if someone you love is? That's what comes next. Let me give you the specific signs that Edgar Cayce identified across hundreds of readings with incoming advanced souls. Pay attention as I describe these markers, because if you recognize yourself or someone you love in this pattern, it will explain struggles that may have seemed random or pathological but are actually evidence of a very different kind of challenge. The first marker is early existential crisis. Unlike souls on their first or second incarnations, who accept the world pretty much as it's presented to them. Advanced returning souls begin asking profound questions very early, often in childhood or early adolescence. Why am I here? What's the point of all this? What am I supposed to be doing? But it's not philosophical curiosity, it's urgent necessity, an almost painful need to understand purpose. These souls feel like they're supposed to be doing something important, but can't remember what. And that forgetting creates constant background anxiety. The second marker is technology fluency combined with ethical unease. If you're from the Atlantean group, you grasp technology almost intuitively. You understand systems, you learn software quickly. You might even have innovative ideas about what could be created, but simultaneously, you feel deep anxiety about how technology is being used. You distrust social media even while using it. You're worried about AI even while being fascinated by it, as if you're remembering both its potential and its dangers. The third marker is unexplained nostalgia for ancient eras. You feel homesick for ancient Egypt even though you've never been. You're deeply moved by images of Atlantis in ways that feel like grief, not fantasy. You're strangely comfortable with Tibetan Buddhism or Hindu philosophy, despite having no exposure to them in your current upbringing. This isn't imagination, it's cellular memory of where you spent previous incarnations. The fourth marker is overwhelm in crowds or dense population areas. Advanced souls often struggle intensely in cities, at concerts, in shopping malls, anywhere with many people in close proximity, because they're perceiving not just physical bodies but energetic fields. And the chaos of overlapping frequencies feels like sensory assault. You need nature, you need silence, you need space in ways that feel desperate, not just preferential. The fifth marker is difficulty with small talk and surface relationships. You can't do shallow, you can't engage in gossip or weather conversations or social pleasantries without feeling like you're dying inside. You're wired for depth, for meaning, for soul-level connection, and everything else feels like excruciating time wasting. The sixth marker is strong visceral reaction to injustice or environmental harm. This goes beyond normal empathy. When you see ecological destruction or human suffering on the news, you feel it as personal pain, as if the harm is happening to you directly. That's because at a soul level, you remember when you were guardian of these systems, and their breakdown feels like betrayal. The seventh marker is psychic or intuitive capacity you didn't ask for. Many of these souls are naturally clairvoyant, empathic, or precognitive, not because they developed these abilities through spiritual practice, but because they brought them from previous lifetimes where such capacities were normal and necessary. You might see things others don't, feel things others don't, know things you have no logical way of knowing. And the eighth marker, perhaps the most universal, the feeling of waiting. You've always felt like you're waiting for something, a signal, a moment, a person, permission to finally begin what you're really here to do. And no matter what you accomplish in conventional terms, that waiting feeling doesn't go away. Cayce said this waiting feeling is accurate. You are waiting because your full activation depends on timing that's cosmic, not personal. And that timing is connected to collective readiness, planetary alignment, and soul group coordination that you can't control. If you recognize yourself in most of these markers, you're likely part of the incoming wave. And the next thing you need to understand is the timeline for when and how activation actually happens. Because Cayce didn't just identify who these souls are. He described exactly when they would arrive and what conditions would trigger their missions to come fully online. According to Cayce's readings compiled across the 1940s, the Great Return would unfold not as a single event, but in 3 distinct waves, each separated by approximately 20 years. And understanding which wave you're part of, if you're part of this at all, helps you understand why your experience has been what it's been. Wave 1 arrived between 1980 and 2000. Cayce called them the Scouts. They came in smaller numbers to test conditions and begin the frequency adjustment work, and he was explicit that they would have the hardest journey because they'd arrive before collective consciousness was anywhere near ready to recognize or support them. If you were born in this window, your life has likely felt like a constant upstream swim. You've felt different, misunderstood, unable to find your people for years or even decades. You might have gone through long periods of isolation, depression, or feeling completely alienated from mainstream culture. And now Cayce's teaching gives you context. You're a scout. You came early. Your job was never to complete missions immediately. Your job was to endure, to hold higher frequency in a dense, resistant environment, and prove it was possible to maintain expanded consciousness in modern Western civilization. You've been doing that, even when it felt like failure. Wave 2 arrived between 2000 and 2020. Cayce called them the bridge builders. This much larger wave began incarnating just as the internet was becoming ubiquitous, and that timing is not coincidental. Cayce said they would need global communication networks to find each other because their missions require collaboration across geographical boundaries that previous generations couldn't cross. If you were born in this window, you're currently in your teens or 20s, perhaps early 30s. You're likely feeling intense frustration that you're not doing enough yet, that you should be further along, that time is running out and you haven't started your real work. But Cayce's message to this wave is clear. You're not late. You're precisely on schedule. Your time is coming. The infrastructure you need is still being built by Wave 1. Your job right now is preparation, education, skill building, and most importantly, finding your soul group, the others who came with you, who you'll work alongside when the moment is right. Wave 3 is arriving between 2020 and 2040. This is the largest influx, the tipping point generation. Cayce said this wave would incarnate during a period of maximum chaos and breakdown because they're here specifically to rebuild. They don't need the old systems to work. They need them to fail so new structures can emerge in their place. Many of these souls are currently children or not yet born, and they will grow up with capacities that seem impossible by current standards. Technological intuition that looks like magic, psychic clarity that's matter-of-fact rather than mystical, emotional intelligence and spiritual maturity that previous generations had to work decades to achieve. But here's the critical piece Cayce emphasized, and this is essential to understand. Each wave cannot activate fully until the previous wave has stabilized. Wave 1 must hold ground before Wave 2 can build networks. Wave 2 must create infrastructure before Wave 3 can utilize it. This is sequential, not simultaneous. We're currently in the transition between Wave 2 establishing their connections and Wave 3 beginning to arrive in large numbers, which means the next 5 to 10 years are absolutely crucial. The stability or chaos of this period will determine how effectively the full mission can unfold. So if you're feeling urgency, restlessness, or pressure to do something right now, trust that feeling. You're perceiving accurate cosmic timing. The window is opening. But before we can talk about what these souls are actually meant to do once they fully activate, we need to address something important. We need to address the shadow side of this teaching, because there's a trap here, a dangerous pitfall that can derail the entire mission if we're not careful. And that's what we turn to next. Before we go one step further, we must address something Edgar Cayce himself warned about repeatedly: the ego's tendency to co-opt soul mission teachings and transform them into spiritual superiority, into a subtle arrogance that undermines the very work these souls came to do. Listen carefully to this chapter, because this might be the most important thing you hear in this entire video. The moment you start identifying as an advanced soul or someone on an important mission, there's a risk. The spiritual ego can inflate. You start thinking you're special, more evolved, more important than others. You start using your perceived soul identity as justification for dysfunction. I can't hold a job because I'm too advanced for mundane work. I can't maintain relationships because other people are too unawakened to understand me. I'm depressed and addicted because I'm a sensitive old soul struggling with Earth's density. Cayce called this mission inflation, and he said it's one of the primary ways advanced souls actually fail their missions. Because the moment you believe you're spiritually superior, you've separated yourself from the very humanity you came here to serve. Here's the truth he emphasized again and again in his readings. If you were truly an advanced soul, that advancement would show not in your self-concept, but in your behavior, in your kindness, in your functionality, in your capacity to love people exactly as they are. Genuinely evolved beings are humble. They're reliable. They're of practical service. They don't talk about being advanced. They simply help. They show up. They do the work that needs doing, even when it's ordinary and unglamorous. If your soul mission makes you feel special but doesn't make you more patient, more capable of meeting life's basic demands, more genuinely useful to others, then you've fallen into spiritual ego, and you need to be honest about that. Your job isn't to identify as special. Your job is to be useful. And usefulness often looks completely ordinary. It looks like showing up for work you don't find spiritually exciting. It looks like being patient with people who frustrate you. It looks like doing the dishes, paying the bills, keeping your commitments, being kind when you don't feel like it. Cayce said the incoming souls who successfully complete their missions will be the ones who integrate their cosmic identity with their human responsibility, who remember who they are and pay their rent on time, who access higher dimensions and show up consistently for their children, who carry ancient wisdom and function effectively in ordinary reality. This isn't meant to deflate you. It's meant to ground you, because grounded, humble service is infinitely more powerful than inflated spiritual self-importance. If you recognized yourself in the markers of an incoming soul, let that recognition inform your choices, not your identity. Let it guide you toward your work, not toward a sense of superiority. Let it help you understand your struggles, not excuse them. The great return needs your gifts. It doesn't need your ego. Know the difference, because that difference will determine whether you become part of humanity's transformation or part of its continued fragmentation. Now, with that essential warning given, we can talk about what these souls are actually meant to accomplish, the specific missions they came to fulfill. Edgar Cayce identified 5 primary missions that the incoming soul wave is collectively here to accomplish. Not individual missions, these are planetary-level objectives that require thousands of souls working in unconscious and conscious coordination. Let me reveal all 5. Mission 1. Technology integration with consciousness. The Atlantean souls are here to prevent humanity from repeating Atlantis's fatal error, developing technology that surpasses the consciousness, capable of wielding it responsibly. Their mission is to ensure that as artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and quantum technologies advance, human consciousness advances proportionally alongside them. They're not here to stop technology's development. That would be impossible and unwise. They're here to spiritualize it, to embed consciousness principles into technological systems so that the two evolve together rather than technology racing ahead while consciousness lags dangerously behind. In practical terms, this means Atlantean souls will be drawn to work in tech fields, but with an ethical orientation that most of their colleagues won't share. They'll be the ones asking questions about impact, about consciousness, about long-term consequences. They'll be the internal resistance to purely profit-driven development. They'll be the bridge between Silicon Valley and spiritual wisdom. Mission 2. Dimensional Bridge Building. The Mystery School initiates are here to prepare humanity for open contact, not just with extraterrestrial intelligence, though that's part of it, but with interdimensional consciousness that's always been present but invisible to consensus reality. As the veil between dimensions continues thinning, and Cayce was clear it would thin dramatically in this era, humanity needs guides who can facilitate contact safely, who can teach discernment between helpful and harmful non-physical entities, who can normalize multidimensional awareness without causing mass panic or psychosis. Their mission is to be translators, to stand between the physical and non-physical realms and make communication possible, to help ordinary humans understand that seeing visions, hearing voices, or sensing presences doesn't mean you're crazy. It means you're perceiving dimensions that were always there, but filtered out by your previous perceptual limitations. Mission 3. Earth Grid Restoration. The Lemurian harmonizers are here to heal the planet's energetic and physical systems simultaneously. They work with ley lines, with sacred sites, with plant medicine, with the living consciousness of Earth herself. Their mission is to restore communication between human consciousness and planetary consciousness. Because right now, most humans are completely deaf to what Earth has been trying to tell us for centuries: how to live here without destroying the systems that sustain all life. This is ecological healing at the deepest possible level, not just policy change or technological solutions, though those have their place, but consciousness change that makes sustainable living instinctive rather than effortful. That makes harming Earth feel like harming yourself, because you finally remember that's what it is. Mission 4. Collective Trauma Resolution. All 3 soul groups share this mission. Cayce said the incoming souls carry cellular memory of previous civilizations' collapses: Atlantis, Lemuria, ancient Egypt, Rome. They know what unhealed collective trauma does to a civilization, how it perpetuates across generations, how it eventually destroys even the most brilliant culture if left unaddressed. They're here to facilitate humanity's processing of millennia of accumulated pain. War, oppression, genocide, slavery, ecological violence, not through political movements alone, though politics matter, but through energetic work that releases trauma stored in the collective field itself. This is shadow work on a planetary scale, and it requires souls who have done enough of their own healing that they can hold space for others' pain without being overwhelmed by it. Mission 5. New Paradigm Demonstration. Perhaps most importantly, these souls are here to simply live differently, to embody new ways of relating, governing, creating, parenting, and organizing human society that prove alternatives to current systems are possible. Cayce said the old paradigm won't be argued out of existence. It will become obsolete by comparison when enough people see and experience genuinely better options. These souls are here to be those options, walking demonstrations of what comes after the old world ends. But here's what you need to understand. These missions cannot be completed by the incoming souls alone. They require support. They require protection. They require space holding from souls already established here, which is why the next chapter speaks directly to those who don't recognize themselves as part of the incoming wave, but still feel mysteriously drawn to this teaching, because there's a reason you're here, and your role is just as essential as theirs. This chapter speaks directly to those who listened to the markers of advanced returning souls and thought, "That's not me. I don't fit that pattern, but I'm fascinated by this teaching anyway." Why? There's a reason. You may not be part of the Great Return, but you are absolutely essential to its success. Edgar Cayce identified another soul group he called the stabilizers, or ground crew. These are beings who incarnated in the decades before the mass arrival, specifically to prepare conditions, to create stability, to be the ground others stand on while they do transformational work. These aren't necessarily souls with dramatic past life histories or ancient wisdom to reclaim. They're often what Cayce called younger souls, or steady souls, beings on earlier incarnation cycles whose current purpose is beautifully simple. Be stable, be functional, be present. Hold the frequency field steady while chaos accelerates around you. If you're ground crew, your markers are different from the incoming wave. You're exceptionally good at functioning in normal reality. You can hold a job, you maintain relationships, you navigate bureaucratic systems, you pay your bills on time. Things that incoming advanced souls often struggle with come naturally to you. You're drawn to support roles rather than visionary ones. Teacher, therapist, nurse, social worker, parent, friend. Your gifts are relational and practical rather than mystical or prophetic.